The paramedics moved in silence, their boots pressing against damp floorboards that groaned beneath their weight. Flashlights flickered across peeling wallpaper, catching dust motes in the air like fireflies caught in a jar. It was a room buried in stillness, not by time, but by design. At the back of the house, in a space no larger than a walk-in closet, they found her. Huddled against the wall, knees tucked into her chest, skin ghost-pale beneath layers of grime, was a young woman. Her eyes squinted against the beam of light, pupils shrinking as though they hadn't seen daylight in years. Her lips parted but no sound emerged, only the faint movement of breath, shallow and mechanical. No one spoke. The officers standing nearby, 2 veterans of the Monroe Police Department, looked on, their faces frozen. One of them, Sergeant Ben Mallory, had to steady himself against the doorframe. The smell of mildew, bleach, and something older, sadder, clung to the air. "She's alive," a paramedic whispered, more to himself than anyone else. He knelt, gently placing a thermal blanket around her narrow shoulders. The woman did not flinch. She only blinked slowly, like someone waking from a coma. The house stood on Maple Avenue, number 112, a quiet corner of Monroe, North Carolina, a town known more for its old Baptist churches and retirees than police tape and trauma. The home belonged to a woman named Alma Wexler, a 70-year-old widow, former nurse and longtime resident of the neighborhood. To anyone passing by, the house appeared ordinary, white paint faded to gray, a tidy front garden with roses Alma pruned every weekend, and a small wind chime that whispered in the Carolina breeze. But on that summer afternoon in 2021, everything changed. 3 days earlier, the house was just another quiet dwelling on a quiet street. The sun had been high in the sky, casting long, soft shadows across the cracked sidewalks. On that particular Tuesday, the heat pressed heavy like a blanket. Most people stayed indoors. Windows were open. Fans buzzed. And from number 112, the sound of music drifted. It wasn't loud. Not at first. Just faint organ hymns, the kind you might hear echoing from an old wooden chapel. But then came the repetition, hour after hour, without pause. Around 3:30 in the afternoon, Mr. Leland, Alma's next-door neighbor, finally made the call. He was 78, a retired math teacher, and not one to bother law enforcement. But something about the low, rhythmic thump he'd heard between the verses unsettled him. He couldn't quite say why. 2 officers were dispatched, a routine noise complaint. Officer Dana Whitmore, 5 years on the force, and her partner, Sergeant Ben Mallory, took the call with little concern. They joked about it in the car. "Another lonely soul with a record player and memories," Ben had muttered. But as they pulled up in front of the house, the music grew louder. Whitmore noted how every window was shut tight despite the blistering heat. Curtains drawn, porch empty. But the garden was freshly watered. The wind chime moved in a slow, unnatural rhythm. Alma answered the door with a faint smile. Her gray hair was pulled neatly into a low bun. She wore a pale blue dress, clean and pressed, and spoke in a calm, unwavering tone. "I apologize for the noise," she said before they could even explain why they were there. "I was listening to some old church recordings, my husband's favorites. He passed last year." Ben noticed how she never quite looked them in the eye, but she didn't seem nervous. If anything, she was composed to a degree that felt practiced. Whitmore asked if they could step inside for a moment. Alma hesitated, then stepped aside. The house was clean, almost too clean. The air inside was cold with the scent of bleach and something else, stale, earthy. Photos lined the hallway. Alma with a man in military uniform, a younger Alma in a nurse's smock, and several pictures of her with a younger woman. Dark-haired, smiling, with a soft oval face. Always the same girl, always at least a decade old. They moved slowly through the living room. Everything was symmetrical, cushions perfectly centered, magazines stacked in descending order. No signs of disarray, no recent activity. As they turned down the hallway, a sound stopped them. It was soft. So soft Ben thought he might have imagined it. A shuffle, or maybe a muffled cough. A sound from behind a door at the end of the hall. It was a plain white door, but what drew their attention was the lock. A fresh brass deadbolt, installed on the outside. Ben approached. The floor beneath his feet creaked once. He placed his hand gently on the doorknob. "What's in here, ma'am?" he asked. "The bathroom," Alma replied. "I'm renovating it. I keep it locked." He glanced at the floor. No paint cans, no plastic sheeting, no dust. But next to the baseboard, he noticed a small pile of fine white powder. Drywall dust. Ben leaned in and pressed his ear against the door. A breath. Not his. Not Dana's. Inside, someone exhaled, long and quiet and human. Ben straightened, exchanging a glance with Officer Whitmore. Her brow was furrowed. They both knew what they'd heard. Alma stood a few feet behind them, her posture unchanged, hands calmly folded in front of her apron. If she had noticed their shift in tone, she didn't show it. "I'm sorry," Ben said, turning to her, keeping his voice neutral, "but that sounded like someone is inside." Alma didn't flinch. "I told you. The plumbing in this house is dreadful, always groaning. The humidity makes everything swell and shift." Ben nodded slowly, not pressing yet. But he stepped aside, motioning subtly to Dana. She moved toward the door, eyes scanning the frame. The lock was new, too new, shiny brass against chipped white paint. Screws unmarred, drilled cleanly. Someone had installed it within the past few weeks, possibly days. The strange part was its position. The lock was on the outside of the door. "I don't mean to offend you, ma'am," Dana said carefully, "but it's a bit unusual to lock your bathroom from the outside." Alma blinked. It was meant to keep the door closed during the remodel. "The latch inside is broken. It swings open sometimes." Ben gestured toward the keyhole. "Do you have the key?" "I believe so," Alma replied after a pause, then turned and walked back down the hallway without urgency. The officers remained silent, exchanging glances again. Her explanation hadn't sounded panicked. If anything, it had come too quickly, too rehearsed. The hallway was narrow, lined with family photographs in mismatched wooden frames. Most featured Alma and a man in uniform, presumably her late husband, or herself, younger, in a nurse's cap. But as they looked closer, the same young woman appeared again and again, sometimes smiling, sometimes in profile, sometimes looking directly at the camera. Long dark hair, soft features, brown eyes. It was the same girl in every shot. The girl they had just pulled from the darkness. Alma returned, holding a small ring with several keys. She extended them toward Dana. "Please," she said, "check it, if you must." Ben stepped forward. "We appreciate your cooperation." Dana selected the brass key, slid it into the lock, and turned it. There was a slight click, and the door creaked open by half an inch, revealing only blackness beyond. The smell hit them immediately. It was not decay, not yet, but something heavy and lived in. Like stale sweat, sour dampness, and the cloying scent of old bleach failing to cover what lay beneath. Ben pushed the door further. His flashlight swept into the room, cutting through layers of shadow. It was indeed a bathroom, or had once been, but the windows were boarded over with plywood from the inside. The fan had been removed, wires hanging loosely from the ceiling. The tiles were cracked, water-stained. At the far corner, a stained mattress lay on the floor. No bedding, just a tattered wool blanket folded once. Next to it, a plastic water bowl, half-filled in a 5-gallon bucket. It was a cell. There were no books, no furniture, no clothing other than what clung to the woman's body. The air felt starved of oxygen. Ben took a slow step inside, his flashlight illuminating the far wall. Scratches lined the tiles, tiny grooves, crisscrossed, inconsistent, but deliberate, as if someone had tried to keep track of something but gave up halfway. Dana stood in the doorway, eyes wide, hand at her radio. "We've got a possible hostage," she said into the receiver. "Female, early 20s, malnourished, needs immediate medical attention. Request EMS, code 3. The young woman, Eva, didn't react to their voices. She sat on the mattress, legs folded beneath her, arms wrapped around her knees. Her hair hung in long, matted ropes. Her skin, where visible, was pale, nearly translucent in places, stretched tight over bone. Her eyes barely blinked, fixed somewhere between the officers and something far away. Ben crouched carefully. "Eva?" he asked gently. "Eva Warren?" No response. He tried again. "You're safe now. We're going to take care of you." Eva tilted her head just slightly, as if hearing from underwater. Behind them, Alma stood at the threshold, her hands still folded, her expression unreadable. She looked not at Eva but at the floor. Her voice, when it came, was soft and clear. She wasn't well, she said. She needed guidance. Dana turned sharply. "You locked her in here?" Alma didn't answer the question. "You wouldn't understand," she said, almost to herself. "The things that were happening to her, the things she was becoming. I did what I had to do." Ben rose to his feet, stepping toward her. "You kept her here for 4 years. She needed protection. From the world. From herself." He stared at her. "From you." Still, Alma didn't react. Her expression remained calm, disconcertingly so. She looked older in that moment. Smaller, but not broken, not afraid. Her conviction sat heavy in the air. Outside, sirens grew louder, backup approaching. As the paramedics entered and began assessing Eva, Ben stepped aside, watching as they gently lifted her from the floor, wrapped her in a thermal blanket, and guided her out into the hallway. Alma moved to follow, but Dana blocked her path. "You'll need to come with us, ma'am." Alma nodded, almost relieved. Of course. As they walked her out of the house, the street had already begun to stir. A few neighbors gathered on their porches, watching from behind screen doors and curtained windows. The ambulance lights painted red and white pulses across the quiet neighborhood. Inside the house, the door to the bathroom swung gently open and shut in the draft left behind. The wind chime on the porch began to move again, its soft metallic notes breaking the silence like a hymn no one wanted to hear. The ambulance doors closed with a muted thud, sealing Eva Warren inside a capsule of sterile light and controlled motion. Paramedics worked methodically, their voices low and professional, calling out vitals, adjusting 4 lines, recording observations that would later become part of a thick medical file. Eva lay still on the gurney, eyes half open, unfocused. When the vehicle began to move, she did not ask where she was going. She did not ask anything at all. At Monroe Regional Hospital, the emergency department cleared a room within minutes. Nurses moved quickly, cutting away the oversized sweater she had been wearing, revealing a body marked not by fresh wounds but by time. Severe muscle atrophy, prominent clavicles, pressure marks on her wrists and ankles, old, symmetrical, consistent with prolonged restraint rather than acute injury. Her skin bore the dull pallor of someone who had lived without sunlight for years. A physician dictated notes while another nurse measured Eva's weight twice, convinced the scale was malfunctioning. It was not. "She's severely malnourished," the doctor said quietly. "Dehydrated. Vitamin deficiencies across the board. And psychologically," he paused, choosing his words, "she's withdrawn beyond anything acute trauma would explain." Eva did not resist examination. She complied with every instruction, turning when asked, opening her mouth when told. Her compliance unsettled the staff more than resistance would have. It suggested something learned, something rehearsed. Across town, the Monroe Police Department had shifted into a different gear. What began as a noise complaint was now logged as a suspected case of unlawful confinement, aggravated abuse, and possible fraud. Detectives arrived at 112 Maple Avenue as dusk settled over the neighborhood, cordoning off the property. Evidence technicians photographed every room, every surface, every detail that had once blended into domestic normalcy. Inside the bathroom, forensic teams documented the scene inch by inch. The mattress was removed and sealed. The bucket was bagged. The water bowl was tested. The boarded windows were photographed from both sides. One technician lingered over the scratches on the tile wall, counting them. There were dozens, not random, not chaotic, grouped. Sergeant Ben Mallory stood at the edge of the hallway, watching in silence. He had returned to the house not as a first responder, but as someone unable to reconcile memory with reality. He remembered Alma Wexler from years ago, her calm voice during school safety demonstrations, the way she corrected students gently, never raising her voice. He remembered her teaching CPR to his graduating class. He remembered trusting her. That trust now felt like something physical he needed to peel away. At headquarters, a clerk ran Eva's name through the national database. The result appeared on the screen in stark black text. Warren, Eva. Female. Date of birth, March 14, 1995. Status, missing. Report filed June 2017. The room fell quiet. "She's been listed as missing for 4 years, the clerk said. Detective Laura Haynes leaned closer. "Who reported it?" "Mother. Linda Warren. Resides in Raleigh." The case file was thin. Eva had been 22 when she disappeared. The report noted an argument with her parents, a period of emotional distress, and a plan to stay with relatives temporarily. No signs of forced abduction, no known criminal associations. The file had been quietly downgraded after 6 months. She was last seen entering a bus station, Haynes read aloud. Destination unknown. No one in the room said what they were thinking. She never left Monroe. Within hours, Linda Warren was on the phone with investigators. When she heard her daughter's name spoken aloud, confirmed, alive, she didn't scream. She went silent. Her breathing became uneven, shallow. "She was with her aunt," Linda said slowly. "Alma offered to take her in. Just until things cooled down." Her voice cracked. I thought she needed space. I thought I was giving her time." Linda explained that Eva had struggled with anxiety after a car accident in her teens. She received disability support for ongoing physical and psychological therapy. She had been fragile, but hopeful, trusting. "She always said Aunt Alma made her feel safe," Linda whispered, "like she knew what to do." The words landed heavily. Back at the hospital, Eva was transferred to a private room under guard. A trauma psychologist attempted a preliminary evaluation. Eva answered questions with nods or single words. Her voice, when it came, was barely audible. "Do you know where you are?" the psychologist asked. Eva nodded. "Do you know how long you were in the house?" Eva hesitated. Her fingers tightened around the blanket. "I stopped counting," she said. When asked why, she closed her eyes. It made it hurt more. Medical staff documented dissociation, delayed affect, and signs of long-term psychological conditioning. She responded most strongly to sudden changes in light. When the room lights were dimmed for the night, she relaxed almost instantly. Meanwhile, detectives turned their attention back to Alma Wexler. She sat in an interview room at the station, posture straight, hands folded neatly in her lap. She declined water, declined a lawyer. Her expression was serene. "I was helping her," she repeated calmly. Eva was sick in ways medicine couldn't reach. Detective Haynes leaned forward. "You kept her locked in a bathroom." "To protect her," Alma said. "From temptation." Haynes slid a photograph across the table. Eva, moments after rescue, wrapped in a blanket, eyes hollow. Alma glanced at it briefly. "That was necessary." "For 4 years?" Haynes pressed. Alma met her gaze. "Healing takes time." Her tone never wavered. She did not deny the confinement. She did not apologize. She spoke not like someone defending herself, but like someone explaining a principle. Investigators began combing through Alma's financial records. What they found added a second layer to the case. Eva Warren had continued to receive monthly disability payments throughout her disappearance. The deposits had never stopped. Neither had the withdrawals. Each month, the money was taken out in cash, by power of attorney. The name on the document, Alma Wexler. Over 4 years, the total exceeded $60,000. Utility bills, groceries, minor home repairs. No medical expenses for Eva, no therapy, no prescriptions. At the house, a folder was found in a kitchen drawer. Inside were neatly arranged bank statements, withdrawal receipts, handwritten notes tracking dates and amounts. The handwriting was precise, methodical. This was not neglect. It was management. The investigation widened. Neighbors were interviewed again, this time with sharper questions. "Yes, she lived alone," one woman said. "But she had company sometimes, a young girl. I assumed it was family." "She kept to a routine," another recalled. "Always went to the store on Tuesdays, church music every evening. No one had questioned it. Nothing had seemed wrong enough." That night, Ben Mallory sat alone in his office, reading through the preliminary reports. The phrases blurred together: prolonged confinement, financial exploitation, psychological coercion. He thought of Eva in the ambulance, of Alma at the door. He thought of how evil rarely announces itself. In a hospital room lit by a single lamp, Eva lay awake. She stared at the ceiling, listening to the unfamiliar hum of machines. A nurse checked her vitals softly, then left the room. For the first time in 4 years, Eva was alone without being watched. She closed her eyes and waited. The files on Alma Wexler spread across the detective's desk like the blueprint of a system. Not a chaotic crime of passion, but something slower, methodical. Each document, each bank transaction, each neighbor's account began to align like pieces of a quiet, invisible machine that had been operating for years right beneath the town's nose. Detective Laura Haynes sat in the briefing room surrounded by Eva Warren's reconstructed timeline. A corkboard displayed key events: her graduation photo, her disability claim approval in 2016, her final text message to her mother, "I'll be at Aunt Alma's for a while, just need to get my head straight," dated June 4, 2017. There was no record of her after that. No bank activity, no phone calls, no social media, no sightings, until last week. "What are we looking at?" Haynes asked, motioning to the financial reports projected on the screen. Special Agent Mark Reyes, a forensic accountant with the state, pointed with his pen. From mid-2017 to now, Alma withdrew approximately $1,240 every month from Eva's disability account, almost always within 48 hours of the deposit. He clicked through slides showing photocopies of withdrawal slips, signed in careful cursive. Legally, she had power of attorney, but morally, It's theft, Haynes finished. Wrapped in scripture, the agents reviewed grocery bills, pharmacy receipts, utility payments, all consistent with the needs of a single person. There were no purchases of feminine products, specialized food, therapy tools, or books that might support another adult living in the home. But something stood out. There were substantial purchases from a Christian bookstore in Charlotte, orders placed almost monthly. The receipts showed large quantities of candles, anointing oil, incense, and old sermon recordings on cassette tape. In some cases, multiple copies of the same sermon. Why would she need 5 copies of Deliverance Through Isolation? Ben muttered, scanning the list. No one answered. A search warrant for Alma's personal journal, found tucked inside her bedroom nightstand, revealed a different kind of documentation, one that ran parallel to the financial records, but in a spiritual language. March 15, 2018, she refuses to pray. Still poisoned by secular thoughts. Confession is minimal. June 2, 2019, a breakthrough. She did not scream during communion. Her silence is her repentance. December 25, 2020, she will not be released until she is cleansed. This is my burden. This is my vow. The entries were precise, dated, emotionally detached. Alma did not express guilt, she expressed duty. She saw herself as Ava's redeemer, Reyes said. She believed she was saving her. Or, at least, that's what she told herself. Meanwhile, neighbors in Monroe began to reevaluate everything they thought they knew about number 112 Maple Avenue. One woman, Mrs. Clark, had lived 2 doors down for nearly 20 years. She remembered Alma as quiet, polite, a little strict, but never alarming. She didn't have visitors, Clark said during questioning, but she wasn't unfriendly, just structured. When asked about Eva, Mrs. Clark hesitated. I thought I saw her once, maybe a few years ago, in the window upstairs. I waved. She didn't wave back. Another neighbor recalled a peculiar smell that would drift from the chimney on Friday evenings. A mixture of burning herbs and something sour. I asked her about it once, he said. She said she was cleansing the house. I figured it was a spiritual thing. This is the South. We don't pry when someone says they're blessing their home. The more people spoke, the more the outline of Alma's constructed world came in view. The most revealing testimony came from someone unexpected. Father Elijah Morton, a retired Baptist minister from the nearby town of Hillsdale, called the station after seeing Alma's face on the news. She used to attend my church, he said, years ago. Before her husband passed, Morton described Alma as devout, reserved but gradually more intense. She asked questions about possession, about deliverance. She once brought a girl with her, maybe 20, and asked if I would perform a cleansing, not a baptism, a purging. He declined, sensing something troubling in Alma's interpretation of Scripture. She believed suffering had a sacred function, Morton said, that physical pain could lead to spiritual healing. I remember telling her, that's not doctrine, that's torture with verses wrapped around it. He never saw her again. Inside the holding facility, Alma remained composed. She declined a public defender, requested a Bible, refused all psychiatric evaluations. To investigators, she offered only measured statements. I followed the path I was given. She chose sin. I offered salvation. She is alive, isn't she? That last sentence hung in the air during a late-night review of her interview. Haynes replayed it 3 times. She is alive, not she's okay. Not I'm glad she's safe. Just the biological fact. It was as if Alma believed that survival itself justified everything. Back at the hospital, Ava's recovery was cautious and carefully monitored. Doctors allowed short visits with her mother, Linda, who now carried the weight of 1,000 regrets in every glance. In their first meeting, Linda reached for her daughter's hand slowly, as if approaching a frightened animal. Eva didn't pull away. You're safe now, Linda whispered. I'm so sorry. I thought you left me. Eva's voice was quiet. I did, but not the way you think. Over time, Eva spoke more, in fragments, sometimes contradictory, sometimes poetic. Her therapist recorded phrases that revealed the strange duality of her confinement. She told me I was a seed in the dark. That light would ruin me before I bloomed. She read Scripture like it was a curse, not a comfort. I believed her. For a long time, one day she asked if she could listen to music. What kind of music? The nurse asked. Anything that isn't a hymn, Eva replied. It was the closest thing to a joke she had made since her rescue. The DA's office began building a case with multiple charges: unlawful imprisonment, elder fraud, abuse of a vulnerable adult, psychological coercion. There was debate about whether Alma was competent to stand trial. A court-appointed psychiatrist found no evidence of psychosis, just rigid delusional belief systems reinforced by religious absolutism. In simpler terms, she was not insane, just fanatical. The legal team debated whether to pursue a plea deal. Some argued the optics of trying a frail elderly woman could work against them. Others insisted that Alma's age did not diminish her intent or her impact. She stole a human life, Haynes said. 4 years, day by day. They pressed forward. A week before the indictment, a new piece of evidence surfaced. During the cleanup of Alma's home, technicians discovered an audio recorder embedded inside an old clock radio in the bedroom. It had a single cassette tape inside, labeled simply Day 1. The tape began with silence, then footsteps, a door closing. Then Alma's voice, soft and measured. Today begins the journey of redemption. We do not listen to the world. The world lies. The world tempts. You will not be released until you are clean. There was a pause, a soft muffled sob. Stop crying, this is love. You'll see. The tape ran for 32 minutes, most of it filled with Alma's voice reading scripture, followed by long stretches of silence. Then again sobbing, then a faint whisper, please. The investigators never determined how many other tapes existed. The rest were either destroyed or hidden too well to find. But this one was enough. Late one evening, Ben Mallory drove past 112 Maple Avenue. The police tape had been taken down, the windows boarded, the yard overgrown. A silence hung over the house, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that follows after a scream no one heard in time. He pulled over, sat in the car for several minutes. No lights, no movement, just the faint whisper of wind through the old wind chime, swaying in the dark. He thought about how easy it was to overlook horror when it dressed itself in routine, how no one had asked questions because Alma had always seemed proper, reliable. Ben had a new photo on his desk now, Eva, taken just a few days ago, standing in the hospital garden with a nurse. She still looked frail, but her eyes were focused. She was learning how to exist again. In the caption, someone had written a quote from her therapist. Survival is not the end of the story, it's the start of a different one. The room was stark, just a metal table, 2 chairs, a camera affixed to the corner ceiling. Alma Wexler sat with her hands folded in her lap as she always did. The light overhead cast long shadows beneath her cheekbones, aging her face in angles. She did not ask for a blanket. She did not ask for water. She had refused a lawyer again. I have nothing to hide, she said. Detective Ben Mallory sat across from her, a folder closed in front of him. He hadn't opened it yet. Alma studied him with the calm scrutiny of someone evaluating a medical chart. She didn't smile, but neither did she frown. You look tired, Benjamin, she said. The world wears you down, doesn't it? Ben didn't respond. He flipped open the folder slowly, revealing a series of photos. Eva's hospital intake, her most recent therapy session, the interior of the bathroom where she had lived. He laid them out on the table one by one like evidence in a courtroom, though no judge was present. Just the two of them, and the silence between. Alma looked at the pictures without flinching. Her eyes lingered on the photo of Eva, sitting in a garden under a tree, her arms wrapped in a blanket, her hair clean and loose. She's stronger than she knows, Alma said. Ben kept his voice flat. You kept her locked in a bathroom for 4 years. I preserved her. You isolated her, starved her, controlled her finances. She was not ready for the world. The world is full of rot and sickness. I gave her structure. I gave her quiet. I gave her purpose. Ben leaned forward. She was your niece. She is my niece. No. She's a survivor now. Of you. Alma blinked, slowly, as if digesting that sentence syllable by syllable. You've forgotten, she said. You've forgotten what suffering means. Ben sat back in his chair, exhaling slowly. He dealt with criminals before, abusers, manipulators, narcissists. But Alma was none of those things in the conventional sense. There was no rage in her, no panic, no bargaining. Just a steady, chilling conviction. He opened a second folder. You worked as a nurse, he said. Before your retirement, you did hospice care, psychiatric wards. Alma nodded. I helped people transition. I witnessed what real despair looks like. He laid out a document. You were disciplined in 1993 for administering unauthorized restraints to a patient. A schizophrenic, she replied calmly. He was violent. He tried to cut his wrists with a spoon. I saved him from himself. Ben didn't argue. He continued reading. In 1998, a patient under your care died after refusing medication. You wrote in your notes that his death was a form of purification. I did not kill him. He chose silence. He chose stillness. I merely did not interfere. Another paper followed. Your husband, Victor Wexler, died in 2009. The coroner ruled it a stroke, but he was found in a chair in your prayer room. Knees bruised, palms calloused. The room had no furniture other than a Bible and a bowl of water. Alma looked down for the first time. He wanted to repent, she said softly. Did he, Alma? Or did he just want you to stop? Ben's voice trembled, not with anger, but with something colder, a bone-deep realization. You've done this before, he said. Not in the same way, not locked doors, but control, isolation. You confuse obedience with healing. Alma looked up. Her eyes were glassy, but not from tears. I never forced anyone to believe, she said. I simply removed the noise so they could hear truth. That afternoon, a team of psychological experts reviewed Alma's profile. One described her as a high-functioning authoritarian personality with religious delusions reinforced by confirmation bias and generational trauma. Another put it more plainly, she's not legally insane, she's morally unreachable. Her pattern wasn't madness, it was ideology. She believed in purification through restriction, redemption through surrender, love through obedience. She used scripture not to comfort, but to justify. In the hospital, Eva sat by the window in her new room, now part of a long-term trauma care facility. She no longer flinched at bright lights. She no longer asked if the door would be locked. But she rarely slept. Her therapist encouraged her to write, not a journal, but letters to the parts of herself she had lost. Eva had filled 2 notebooks. Sometimes she wrote to her before self, the girl who liked sunflower seeds and indie movies and didn't cry when it rained. Other times she wrote to her during self, the one who counted tiles, traced ants, learned the language of silence. And then once she wrote a letter to Alma. It wasn't angry. It wasn't a scream. It was a question. Did you ever love me, or did you just love the version of me that needed you? She tore out the page and folded it 3 times. Then she burned it. Ben visited the house one last time before it was scheduled for demolition. The floor creaked like it remembered. The wind chime had stopped moving. In the bathroom, he stood in the space where Eva had lived, turning in a slow circle. The walls still held faint outlines of where the mattress had been. The floor was scrubbed clean, but no one had touched the scratches on the wall. He ran his hand over them, tiny lines, almost invisible. There were hundreds, some grouped in 5s, some crossed out, some forming what looked like words but weren't. Ben found himself counting them before he even realized. Then he stopped, because counting, he knew now, was not hope, it was survival. Alma's trial was scheduled for the following spring. The prosecutors prepared dozens of witness lists, medical experts, financial analysts, trauma psychologists. But it was Eva's choice whether to testify. For weeks, she remained undecided. Then one morning, she asked her therapist, "If I speak, does that mean I forgive her?" "No," the therapist said. "It means you remember out loud." Eva nodded. That night, she began writing again. Not letters, not questions, but a statement. Her own. The courtroom was unusually silent for a case that had captured statewide headlines. There were no reporters inside, judge's orders. No cameras, just the slow rhythm of fans circling above and the rustle of papers as the court clerk adjusted the docket. Alma Wexler entered in a pale gray jumpsuit, her posture as straight as ever. She did not look around. Her eyes remained fixed on the judge as she took her seat beside the public defender she had finally agreed to accept, though only for the appearance of due process. Her expression was unreadable. Across the aisle, Eva sat with her therapist and a victim advocate. She wore a navy blue sweater and jeans, simple and loose-fitting, her hair pulled back in a soft braid. There was a small silver bracelet on her wrist, one her mother had brought from home. She twisted it unconsciously, not out of nervousness, but as if grounding herself in something that wasn't a locked room. Judge Helene Hartley, known for her calm demeanor and sharp mind, entered and took the bench. Her voice was measured. "We are here for the opening of the State of North Carolina v. Alma Wexler, case number 2021 to 46,732. Charges include unlawful imprisonment, aggravated abuse of a dependent adult, financial exploitation, and criminal neglect." She paused, glancing down at the file. To the defense, "How does your client plead?" The public defender stood. "Not guilty, Your Honor." There was no audible reaction in the room, no gasp, not even a raised eyebrow. No one expected Alma to plead otherwise. The trial began. The prosecution opened with photos, not words. The first image was of the room, small, windowless, dimly lit, then the scratches on the wall, the mattress, the bucket. Then, slowly, the camera shifted, Ava's face the night she was found, her weight, her hands, her eyes. No one spoke for 20 seconds as the images played across the projector screen. And when the prosecutor, Susan Layton, finally did speak, her voice was even. "This is not a case about theology," she said. "It is a case about captivity, about control, about what happens when someone believes they are above the law, and beyond compassion." She described Alma's patterns, her financial exploitation, her use of isolation as spiritual treatment, the violation of trust between caregiver and family. She spoke not in dramatic tones, but like someone slowly laying bricks, one after another, building a wall of evidence. She did not rescue Ava from the world, Layton said. She removed her from it against her will and treated her suffering as a divine calling. The defense, for their part, took a different approach. They framed Alma as a well-intentioned but misguided woman of faith, a former nurse who believed she was shielding her niece from the chaos of the outside world. They emphasized her clean criminal record, her community involvement, her age, her clarity. She believed, the lawyer said, that Ava was in danger, from herself, from her mental health, from modern medicine, and she did what she thought was necessary. The courtroom didn't react, but Ben, sitting in the back row, clenched his jaw. He had heard that tone before. From Alma herself, witnesses were called. The neighbor who reported the music, the paramedic who had entered the room, a financial expert who walked the court through each month of withdrawn benefits, a therapist who described the long-term impact of psychological isolation. Each added another layer to the structure of the case, details, timelines, patterns. But everyone in the room knew the trial would pivot on one moment, when Ava chose to speak, and now the day had arrived. Ben watched her step up to the stand. She walked slowly but steadily. No one helped her. She didn't look at Alma. Not once. When she took the oath, her voice was clear. "I do." She sat down, adjusted the microphone, and for a brief second, the room felt too still. Then the prosecutor asked, "Ava, can you tell the court what happened the day you went to live with your Aunt Alma?" Ava nodded. Her hands rested in her lap. "I was 22. I had just dropped out of school. I was having panic attacks every day. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. My mom and I fought a lot. She didn't know what to do, so I called Alma." "Why her?" Ava paused. She was calm, always calm. "When I was a kid, she taught me how to fold towels, how to cut my toast in fourths. Everything was neat when I was around her. I thought, maybe that would fix me. And what happened when you arrived?" She made tea, told me the guest room was ready, told me we wouldn't need phones, too distracting, said quiet would help me hear myself again. The jury listened in total stillness. "And did she hurt you, Ava?" Ava didn't answer immediately. She didn't hit me. She didn't scream. She just rearranged things. First it was no phone. Then no lights after 6 p.m. Then no doors closed. Then the bathroom. "Did you try to leave?" "I did. Twice. The first time she said I was regressing, that I was not ready, that I was chasing chaos. The second time she locked the door." "And how long were you in that room?" Ava looked down. "I lost count." Ava took a breath before continuing. It was not shaky. It was deliberate, as if she had practiced this moment many times in her mind. At first she said, "I believed her." The words moved through the courtroom like a quiet ripple. "She told me I was sick in ways doctors couldn't see. That medication only covered symptoms. That what I needed was silence, structure, distance from temptation." Eva's eyes lifted briefly, scanning the jury without focusing on any one face. "And when you're scared, when you feel broken, you want to believe someone who sounds certain." The prosecutor let the silence stretch. "Did you resist?" she asked. "Yes," Ava replied, "but not right away." She described the early weeks in Alma's house as something deceptively gentle. Meals at set times, long readings from scripture, no mirrors, no television. Alma spoke softly, often repeating the same phrases until they felt less like words and more like rules of gravity. She said freedom was dangerous when you don't know who you are, Ava said. She said discipline was love. Several jurors shifted in their seats. "And the bathroom?" the prosecutor asked. "That came later." Eva's fingers tightened around the edge of the witness stand. "One night I told her I wanted to leave. I said I needed to see my mother." Alma didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She smiled and said, "If you leave now, you'll undo everything we've done." Ava swallowed. "She told me to take a bath. Said water would calm me." While I was inside, she locked the door. When I realized, I thought it was a mistake. I laughed, I knocked, I asked her to stop joking. Her voice faltered for the first time. She said, "The treatment has begun." The courtroom remained frozen. She didn't touch me, she didn't threaten me, she just left. And when she came back the next morning, she brought water and said I had failed my first test. The defense attorney rose slowly. "Objection, Your Honor. This is emotionally charged speculation." Judge Hartley looked at him calmly. "Overruled. The witness is recounting her lived experience." Eva continued. "She told me the world outside was watching, waiting for me to fail. She said if I stayed silent long enough, God would speak." "And did he?" the prosecutor asked quietly. Eva shook her head, but Alma did. Every day. The twist came not in what Eva described next, but in how she described it. "There were moments," she said, "when I felt grateful." A murmur rippled through the room. "When you're deprived of everything," Eva explained, "even cruelty starts to feel like care." The days blurred together. I stopped screaming. I stopped asking. And when she praised my silence, when she said I was progressing, it felt like relief. She looked down, ashamed. She made me believe my pain had meaning. Across the courtroom, Alma sat motionless. Her eyes were fixed on Eva now, not angry, not fearful, but attentive, almost proud. The prosecutor approached carefully. "Eva," she asked, "did your aunt ever tell you why she was doing this?" "Yes." "What did she say?" "She said she had been chosen," Eva replied, "that she had failed before, with patience, with her husband, and that God had given her one last soul to save." A breath moved through the room. "She said if I survived, it would prove she was right." The words landed heavily. That was the moment the trial shifted, not legally but morally. This was no longer just a story of confinement. It was a story of identity, of a woman who needed redemption so badly that she tried to manufacture it by controlling another human being. The defense declined to cross-examine Eva. There were no questions they could ask without deepening the damage. When Eva stepped down from the stand, her legs trembled slightly, but she did not falter. Her mother stood as she passed, their eyes meeting for a brief second, an exchange of grief and forgiveness too complex for language. The judge called a recess. Outside the courtroom, the hall filled with low murmurs. Some jurors avoided eye contact, others stared at the floor. Ben Mallory stood near the exit, watching Alma being escorted by 2 deputies. For the first time she looked small, not broken, but diminished. The verdict came 2 days later. Guilty on all counts: unlawful imprisonment, financial exploitation, abuse of a vulnerable adult. The sentence, 25 years. When the judge read it aloud, Alma did not react. She did not cry. She did not protest. When asked if she had anything to say, she stood. "I answer to God," she said calmly. "Not to this court." Then she sat. The gavel fell. Eva was not present for the sentencing. She was outside, standing beneath a tree across the street, watching leaves move in the wind. Her therapist stood nearby but did not speak. After a long moment, Eva said, "I thought hearing the sentence would make me feel free." "And?" the therapist asked. "It didn't," Eva said, "but it made me feel real again." She paused. "I don't know if she was evil," Eva added. "I think she was afraid, and she mistook control for faith." The therapist nodded. "That doesn't make what she did acceptable." "No," Eva agreed, "but it explains why it was possible." That night the courtroom emptied. The case moved toward closure. Files were archived, headlines shifted. But in Monroe, people still slowed their cars as they passed Maple Avenue. Still wondered how something so quiet could hide something so devastating. Eva would leave the state within months, change her name, start over. Not because she was running, but because she wanted a life that belonged only to her, and Alma Wexler would spend her days in a prison chapel, reading the same verses she once used to justify a locked door. The story did not end cleanly. It rarely does, because the most unsettling truth remained unanswered. If suffering is ever mistaken for salvation, how many locked doors are we willing to ignore before we call it what it is? In the weeks following Alma Wexler's conviction, the town of Monroe settled into an uneasy quiet. The courthouse steps, once crowded with murmuring onlookers and out-of-town journalists, were empty now. The headlines had faded, but inside the town, its churches, barbershops, school cafeterias, something lingered, a discomfort, not rage, not sorrow, shame. For most, the realization did not arrive in a dramatic moment. It came in pieces, in offhand remarks that suddenly sounded hollow, in half-remembered encounters with Alma that, in retrospect, had the clarity of hindsight sharpened to a blade. At Harris Grocer, Mrs. Delaney, who had lived 3 doors down from the Wexler home, stopped bagging apples midway through and said aloud to no one, "I used to think that woman was just particular, always buying the same soap, never looking anyone in the eye. I thought it was discipline. Turns out it was something else." At Monroe First Baptist, Pastor Owens revised his Sunday sermon to include a passage he rarely used, James 4:17, "If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them." Some parishioners nodded, others looked at their hands. There had been signs people began to admit, things noticed but dismissed. The boarded windows explained away as storm preparation. The soft music every evening, rationalized as religious routine, the lack of visitors, the curtains that never opened. The local high school organized a discussion forum in their civic studies class. The topic was, "Where does community responsibility begin?" A student named Jordan spoke first. "My mom said she waved at Alma every morning. She thought she was just a private person." Another student, Leah, added, "But that's the point, right? We let people be private, even when it starts to look like hiding something. We don't want to interfere." "So we don't?" The teacher asked, "Is privacy more important than safety?" No one answered. At the back of the room, a guidance counselor jotted down notes. The police department wasn't spared from reflection either. Sergeant Ben Mallory compiled a private memo titled, "Failures in Community Policing, the Wexler Case," not meant for publication, but as a mirror for the department. He reviewed the original calls about strange music, the anonymous tips about a reclusive woman, even the minor complaint logged in 2019 by a postal worker who had noted a foul odor near the Wexler home. None had triggered follow-up. None had broken through the illusion of benign eccentricity. "We didn't fail to act," Ben wrote. "We failed to imagine that something like this could happen. And in that failure, we gave her time." He didn't share the memo with the press. He shared it with his rookie officers. Town hall meetings became more crowded. Some wanted accountability. Others wanted the memory to go away. A woman stood up during a public comment session and asked, "Are we going to tear down that house?" There was a murmur of agreement. Another voice called out, "And do what? Pretend it never happened?" The mayor, an older man with weathered hands, simply said, "We'll listen." It was the first time in years anyone remembered him saying that phrase without following it with a promise. That was progress, in its own small, painful way. What struck many in Monroe hardest was not the cruelty of Alma Wexler, it was how easily it had been wrapped in normalcy, how she had walked among them for years, with a gentle smile and an unmatched casserole recipe, and no one had suspected the prison she kept inside her home. "How many other houses are silent like that?" someone whispered during a late-night diner conversation. No one answered, but the question stayed in the air long after the coffee cooled. The house at 112 Maple Avenue remained standing. The town council had voted to delay demolition, citing legal ownership issues and budget constraints, but many believed it was simply hesitation, a reluctance to erase the scene before fully understanding what it meant. A few people claimed to see lights on in the house at night, even though power had been cut. Others claimed they heard hymns playing faintly from within. None of those things were true. But the stories served a purpose. They gave shape to the town's guilt because Monroe, like many places, preferred its tragedies to be spectral, easier to haunt than to solve. And somewhere behind closed doors, people whispered the uncomfortable truth that no one wanted to say aloud. Maybe Alma believed she was saving her. It didn't excuse what she had done, but it made it harder to categorize her as a monster. And that was more terrifying, because if salvation could become control and righteousness could become cruelty, then who else with good intentions and quiet manners was capable of harm? At the Graham County Correctional Facility for Women, Alma Wexler was known simply as the nurse. She had earned the nickname not for tending wounds or assisting staff, but for the quiet, clinical manner in which she moved through the facility, slow, composed, observant. She never raised her voice, never complained, never asked for visitors. She had not received any anyway. Alma declined participation in group therapy, declined spiritual counseling from the prison chaplain, declined her right to appeal. When asked why, her answer was always the same: what is done is done. Judgment belongs to God. Her cell was immaculate, her bed always made with military precision. Books lined her shelf, mostly scripture, religious philosophy, and one worn copy of The Cost of Discipleship by Dietrich Bonhoeffer, which she reread every few months. She did not write letters. She did not cry. To some inmates she was unnerving, to others fascinating. In the prison cafeteria she sat alone. But inmates often glanced toward her table as if her presence offered gravity or threat. A few younger women occasionally approached, usually out of curiosity, and Alma, always composed, would offer them a seat, then begin with a question, "Do you believe in obedience?" Over time she began to gather a small circle, not followers exactly, but listeners. She never called what she shared teachings. She referred to them as corrections. She would speak softly about chaos in the modern world, about the dangers of self-indulgence, about how freedom without discipline is just another form of captivity. Some of the women found comfort in her certainty. One inmate serving 12 years for armed robbery said later in an interview, "She didn't tell me I was wrong, she just said the world was. And honestly, that made me feel less alone." Another said, "She had this way of looking right through you, like she saw everything you regretted, and forgave you for regretting it." Prison staff, however, were less impressed. They monitored Alma closely, especially after 2 inmates began fasting without explanation. Another refused her psychiatric meds. One more had carved a small cross into her wrist with the edge of a spoon. The prison psychiatrist filed a quiet report titled, "Emergent Authority Complex." Case Study, Alma Wexler. In it, she wrote, "Subject exerts influence not through force, but through certainty, not by demanding obedience, but by offering clarity in an environment designed to break it. She offers no freedom, only order." One of the few staff members who engaged Alma regularly was Correctional Officer Natalie Rames. Rames was 38 with 10 years of service, and a quiet skepticism she carried like armor. She was professional, impartial, but something about Alma drew her curiosity. One afternoon, during routine checks, she found Alma sitting cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, hands resting on her knees. "Meditation isn't on the approved schedule," Rames said dryly. Alma opened her eyes. "This isn't meditation, it's submission." "To what?" "To the silence between sins." Rames leaned against the doorframe. "You ever doubted?" "Doubt what?" "That what you did was right." Alma tilted her head. "I never did it to be right," she said. "I did it because I was chosen. Whether I was right is not my concern." Rames exhaled. "That's convenient." Alma smiled, not unkindly. Convenience is the devil's favorite word. Later that month, Rames requested to switch to a different cell block. When her supervisor asked why, she hesitated, then replied, "Because talking to her makes you start second-guessing basic things, like whether discipline is a virtue or a weapon." There were rumors that a documentary crew had petitioned for an interview with Alma. She declined. When the prison warden asked her directly, she said, "You don't invite wolves to tell bedtime stories." Still, she allowed herself one indulgence. Every Sunday she requested access to the prison chapel, alone. She would sit for an hour in the front pew, hands folded, back straight, eyes closed. No sermon, no music, just stillness. A guard once peeked in and asked, "What are you praying for?" Alma replied, "I'm not praying, I'm listening." "To what?" She opened her eyes slowly, to see if heaven is still silent. In her 6th month of incarceration, Alma was issued a new mirror for her cell. The previous one had cracked. The reflective surface was clean, cheap, institutional. She stared into it for a long time that evening, not inspecting her face, but searching for something deeper. Her expression didn't change. She saw herself clearly, and she smiled, not with triumph, not with malice, but with absolute certainty. The bus station in Asheville was quiet that morning. A low fog drifted across the pavement, curling around the benches like it had nowhere else to go. Eva Warren sat near the last row of plastic seats, a single canvas duffel bag by her feet. Inside were clothes, a paperback novel, a Polaroid photo of her and her mother, taken just 3 weeks ago, and a plane ticket tucked between 2 receipts. She was leaving, not in the way people usually mean when they say that. Not running, not erasing, just stepping outside the borders of where her pain had taken root. New state, new name, no press, no interviews, no podcasts. Her therapist had offered to help her write a memoir. Eva declined. "I don't want my story to belong to someone else," she'd said. Instead, she kept a notebook, not a diary, just moments, phrases, small things she never wanted to forget. Not because they were beautiful, but because they were real. Like how silence could hum, or how shadows on tile looked different when you stopped fearing them. or how some kinds of control wear the costume of love so perfectly that even freedom feels suspicious. A man in his 60s sat beside her on the bench, cradling a styrofoam coffee. He didn't speak at first, just looked out at the buses. After a while he said, "Going far?" Eva hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I guess I am." He smiled. "Good, the farther the better, right?" She didn't answer. He took a sip of his coffee and added, "Sometimes I think we're all just running from the same thing." "What's that?" she asked. He looked at her, his face worn but kind. "Versions of ourselves we never got to be." Eva turned that over in her head. Then, softly, "What if we were never allowed to be them?" He didn't respond for a while. Finally he said, "Then I hope we get to become them on the second try." His bus was called. He stood, nodded once, and walked away. Eva watched him go, then opened her notebook and wrote just one line. Maybe healing is remembering without wanting to go back. The town of Monroe didn't forget her, not really. People still whispered about the girl who came back from nowhere. Still left flowers outside the fence of the house on Maple Avenue, long since boarded up and sold to a construction firm that hadn't broken ground. They wondered in passing conversations where she had gone, whether she'd changed her name, whether she was happy. But no one said her name in church announcements. No scholarship fund was created in her honor. No mural. Just quiet. And maybe that's what she wanted. In the state records office, Eva's name had been legally changed to Grace Merrill, a name she had chosen not for its beauty but its irony. Grace, she had told the court clerk, is what people give you when they don't know what you've survived. The new birth certificate felt both liberating and false, like wearing someone else's coat. It would take time to fit, but it was hers. She carried it with her now, along with a folder of documents that said, in essence, this person used to be someone else. And maybe in some ways that was true. But the girl in the mirror still had her eyes, still remembered how to listen to silence. On her last night in North Carolina, Eva visited a church, not to pray, just to sit. It was empty. The doors were unlocked. The lights dimmed. She sat in the back pew, tracing the grain of the wood with her thumb, listening to the way the old building breathed. And then she spoke, not aloud but inwardly. To the version of herself still hiding in that room, to the girl who had survived by becoming invisible, to the woman who now chose to be. She boarded the bus just after 6:45 a.m., taking a window seat. The fog began to lift as the engine rumbled awake. Outside, the sun rose slowly over the hills, casting soft gold across the empty lot. Eva rested her head against the window and closed her eyes. Not to sleep, just to feel the movement. And for the first time in years, it felt like she was going somewhere that didn't have a locked door waiting. At the end, epilogue, short, open-ended. There are stories we tell to survive, and there are stories we survive that no one ever tells. But sometimes, in the space between those two things, there is a person. Not a victim, not a symbol, just someone trying to live honestly. After the silence breaks,